I unknowingly hung out with a murderer before he was arrested. This event happened 11 years ago. I had just turned 18 and moved to Orange County, California. I moved into an apartment complex near the community college I was attending, so a bunch of younger people around my age lived there. I didn't know a single person in California, so I would take any opportunity to socialize and meet new people. A big gathering place at the complex was at the main pool where people would drink and relax in the sun. Over the first few months, I would meet a bunch of people while hanging out at the pool. I never got super close to any of them, but I would see these same people several days a week. We would often go back to each other's apartments after the pool to drink or smoke some more. It was a really mellow and fun environment. 3 people I would see all the time were Sarah, Mike, and John. One day after hanging out at the pool, Sarah, my girlfriend, and I went back to my apartment. The 3 of us smoked and Sarah went back home. Just a regular day. The next day, we were at the pool, and there were a few of the usual people missing, but still a solid 10 people, so we didn't really notice. We go home later that night and my girlfriend gets a call from one of our friends. My girlfriend playfully answers her phone and the expression on her face starts to change. She's just listening and her eyes get super wide. She says,
"What the heck? Are you effing serious?"
Then hangs up the phone. I'm super confused, so I ask her, "What? What happened?" She says,
"Dude, the police just found Sarah dead in Mike's apartment and Mike is nowhere to be found."
What the heck? It was insane. I asked her if he said anything else, but she told me he was really hard to understand. We eventually went to bed and met up with the usual crowd at the pool the next day, which included John and his fiancée. We're all talking about how unbelievable this is. Sarah was the epitome of sweet, and Mike was easily one of the kindest people I'd ever met. He was one of the first people I met when I moved, and he gave my underage butt some beer and told me stories. These were both good people. It didn't make any sense. We all kind of started speculating and just tried to make sense of it. Nobody can get a hold of Mike. We all start to worry if he's safe. Somebody suggests that Mike probably killed Sarah, panicked, and ran. That was a hard pill to swallow for most of us, but it was the only thing that kind of made sense. John shook his head and said, "Man, just awful." We all dispersed and went home. It would be the last time that I would see most of those people. Fast forward a month or two. I was hanging out in my apartment one evening when my girlfriend calls me frantically.
"Please come to my friend's apartment. You are not going to believe this shit. This is the most screwed up shit I've ever experienced."
I rushed over to the apartment where my girlfriend was. She was with 2 friends we knew from the pool. One of them was crying hysterically while the other sat with him. My girlfriend motioned for me to go outside, and the other friend stayed back to keep consoling the other. Once we were out of earshot, she told me why her friend was crying so intensely. Her friend had just got back from being with the police. He was asked to identify pieces of a dismembered body that were found in the sewer. He was crying because he positively identified the body parts as Mike's. How did the police know they were there? They knew because John told them he did it. Turns out John was and still is a broke piece of crap. This bastard was engaged and didn't have enough money for his wedding. Being a goddamn smart person, Mike had a bunch of money saved up. John found out about it and decided to kill Mike and steal his money. John was an acting student and asked Mike to help him move some heavy things at the theater. When Mike's back was turned, John shot him. He then took Mike to another location where he dismembered his body and dumped the remains in the sewer. John took Mike's keys and phone and then went back to Mike's apartment. From there, he texted Sarah on Mike's phone, asking for her to come over because he wanted to talk. Being the sweet and caring person she was, Sarah went over to Mike's apartment to help him feel better. When she got there, John snuck up behind her and shot her. He left the apartment and framed Mike for Sarah's murder. John was caught because he's a stupid effing idiot. He paid some kid to withdraw money from Mike's ATM account. Cops found the kid and he told them about John. They quickly tracked John down at his effing bachelor party, and he was taken in for questioning where he would admit that he murdered Sarah and Mike. He would later be sentenced to death. After sentencing, Mike's dad spoke to John across the courtroom and said, "My only regret is that the state of California doesn't allow me to kill you myself." Turns out his fiancée tried to help him hide evidence, and she was sentenced to time as well. All in all, pretty dark story. Aside from the violence, What messes me up is that this guy had literally just murdered two of our friends, and he was at the pool commiserating with us. Like genuinely acting upset, sad, and confused. He's a horrible human, and I hope he suffers for the rest of his life. My deepest and continued condolences go out to the family of the two innocent people that were killed. My family and I are from Australia, and back in 2007 we decided to take a month-long holiday to America. We traveled from Los Angeles up the West Coast and then back down through Nevada. We did this by renting a car and doing the whole vacation road trip style. One night we were traveling towards Lompoc and stopped in Santa Barbara for the night to sleep. We drove around a while looking for a decently priced motel that wasn't too bring your own UV light, if you know what I mean. My mom and dad found a place that looked okay and went inside to inquire about the price of a room for the night, while my sister and I stayed in the car and listened to music on our iPods. We were bopping along to the Frey album I had bought that day when my sister removed her headphones and said, "Look at Mum, what is she doing?" I look up out the window and can see into the reception of the motel and see my dad talking to the manager and my mum displaying very cold and odd body language. She's usually very friendly with staff everywhere, so this was odd for her. "What's wrong with her?" I said to my sister, as we kept a close eye on them. My mum was standing behind my dad with her arms crossed and looking around the place as if she was on guard for something, as if her hypervigilance senses had kicked in. After some time, my mum and dad get back in the car and discuss what to do about staying the night. My dad stated we wouldn't find anywhere cheaper for the night, and he was hungry and ready for dinner, so we better just stay here. Plus, it was the last room available, so we would have to make a quick decision. To his dismay, my mum disagreed. "I don't like this place, I have a bad feeling," said my mum. My dad argued on, getting more and more irritated that my mum couldn't explain what she didn't like about the place, until my mum finally snaps and yells over my dad saying, "We are not staying here." "Bloody hell, fine," my dad says as he starts the car and backs out of the motel's driveway. At this point, my sister and I are looking at each other like, what the heck just happened? But we stay quiet as Mum seems on edge. Anyway, we end up finding a place to stay that Mum approved of and bunkered down for the night. In the morning, we are all bustling around the motel room getting ready for the day when my dad turns up the TV to hear a news story about a shooting. It was at the same motel my mum didn't want to stay at. Turns out about 15 minutes after we left, a couple walked in and booked that last room. As they booked the room, a man that was standing behind them shot them both because they took the last room. We all turned to look at my mom, who was standing there wide-eyed, watching in horror. "I told you, I had a bad feeling about that place," she said to my dad, who was pretending not to listen. Moral of this story is, always trust your gut. Or better, your mom's gut. My family and I had a caravan in a holiday park in New South Wales, Australia. We would go there every school holidays, and there was lots of other kids I used to run around and play with. I have fond memories of this place, where I learned to ride a bike and had my first kiss. But other memories are not as good, and they now leave me with that egg flip feeling in my stomach. The people that owned the caravan park had a son. He was roughly 25 years old, and I would have been around 5 or 6. He would drive around the park and collect everyone's rubbish on a tractor, and do other odd jobs like this to help out his parents. Every once in a while he would pull up when I was playing out the front and ask if I wanted a ride on the tractor. I, being young and naive, of course accepted and jumped on, because what child doesn't want to ride on a tractor? This was back in the days where parents would let their children play in the streets without much supervision, and you just came back home when the streetlights came on. One day when he dropped me back to our van, my dad came storming out, grabbed me by the arm and yanked me off the tractor. Without saying a word to the man, he took me inside and told me to never ever hang out with him again.
"I don't want you hanging around with that man again."
"But he's nice. He gives me lollies."
"Just don't. I'm telling you, don't talk to him."
I couldn't understand why my dad didn't want me talking to the nice man who only gave me tractor rides, gave me lollies and hugs and sometimes the occasional sandwich. I remember telling the man one day, "My dad said I'm not allowed to talk to you anymore." To which he smirked and replied.
Oh yeah? Why's that?
Fast forward nearly 14 years later, my family and I are watching the news when the man's face flashes across the screen attached to a story where he had killed 2 people and is now serving time in prison. I remember my dad yelling out,
Come look at this. Look at this. I knew he was bad news. There was always just something about him. Do you remember when he used to take you around on the tractor?
My blood ran cold and my stomach dropped. The most disturbing part? He killed people with pills he would call his lollies. Please always listen to your parents. My God, I would be dead by now if it wasn't for them.
Don't skip this.